Sorry.
She'll be 27 this month, or she just turned 27. So I've been doing it quite a while. I'm a member of 4 local clubs, and mostly Montgomery County is my main club, and I've been secretary and president and program chair, and now I'm currently treasurer. Here, let me share my screen. Where is it there? Yeah, back up. So this is my information, and I'm part of Montgomery County Woodturners. If you're we meet at the Woodworkers Club in Rockville, and we meet there once a month, kind of like you guys meet here, only we try to be in person. And this is my first time doing this kind of thing, so if you have questions, shoot them out. I saw one come by through in chat, and I will try to answer that one. But I'm going to try to talk about how long it takes to make that. I get that question a lot. How long did it take to make that? We'll talk about what is wood turning. Talk a little bit about where I'll find the wood, and what we do when we have our wood. And I'll give you a little demo at the end, and show you how I turn a bowl. So what is wood turning? Wood turning is the craft of using a wood lathe with a handheld tools to cut shape that is symmetrical around the axis of rotation. This is a picture of Bob at the fair. He and Bert built this lathe. It's a pole lathe, it's called, and it's meant to connect to a springy branch usually, and a bodger would go out in the field and purchase a tree from a farmer. He would set up shop, he would cut it down, he would cut it all up, and then he would start making chair legs on something like this that he had taken parts of and put it out there. This is called spindle turning. He's got a piece of wood in there with a string around it that would connect to the springy branch, and then he would be making chair legs here, and this is called between centers because there's a point here and a point here where it's connected. So he would be cutting fresh wood, so it's green, so it may move a little bit, but the chair makers back in the day making Windsor chairs, that was fine. The problem with this kind of lathe is when you push down, you can cut, but then the wood has to return back. It's called a reciprocal motion. So every time you push down with that, it cuts, and then it has to have time to return. What next happened was we got some continuous rotation. It started with a big wheel lathe. We used to have one at the fair, where you'd have a big wheel and then just a handle to turn it, and you'd have your apprentice sit there and turn the wheel all day so that you could cut all in the same direction. We couldn't get anybody to turn that, so that's why we went to the pole lathe. But this is a picture on the top picture is a picture of a gentleman in England who reconstructed a Leonardo da Vinci. That's his little drawing over on the side. His picture of what the lathe would be. So he was turning with that, and it's like a treadle lathe, like an old sewing machine would have a treadle on it, and you push down and it just keeps spinning in the same direction. Then steam and water and wind power came along, and you didn't have to press down anymore. You could just sit there and turn. The bottom picture is of 1850s, where they had a machine that could turn in so that it would cut things. And this happens to be that made rifles for the Civil War, turning by steam power. So it's no recovery time, it's faster, and it gives you, when you have something, you don't need it between centers. Like these needed to be between centers, but when we got more power, we didn't necessarily have to do that. We have different ways of holding it. Today we have electric lathes. This is a picture of me turning at the Renwick Museum in 2010. It was there was a donation by Fleur Bresler and her husband of many pieces of turned wood, and they had different clubs in the area come and do demonstrations on the weekends, and I was lucky enough to do that. But electric lathes allow you to turn all professional hobbyists, where we have a fair along lathe. I have mine in my basement. You can turn anywhere. Stop. All right. Sorry. So once you become a wood turner, you need to figure out what you want to turn. So do you want to turn a natural edge bowl? Do you want to turn a regular bowl? Do you want it to be round? Do you want it to be end grain and show that? So this is a famous, one of the founding turners of the current market of wood turning, David Ellsworth. And I was lucky enough to take a class at his when he lived in Pennsylvania. And this is him cutting out some blanks. And in the second picture, where you see this green line I've written over here, that would give us a regular bowl. Like this one, this is actually a bowl from the class. He turns poplar wood in class because it's easy to turn, and he's got a lot of it. Doesn't make for a fancy bowl, but it gives you a lot of feedback on what you're doing right and wrong. So if he's cutting out the center of the log by doing these two lines. The center is where you'll get a lot of cracking, and nobody really wants a cracked bowl. People sometimes fix them, and I've put some butterflies in them. Some people put other things like epoxy in, but my goal is to try to not have a cracked bowl. So he is making this one to have a round bowl like this. This piece, if we turn it this way, gives us this natural edge bowl. So we're gonna put this on so that we try to leave some bark along here. Now, this end right here would be the closest to us. So as the log rolls along each side, it comes down here. So when you take out of the middle of this log to make your bowl and leave the bark on, it gives you that shape. And you can also get some bowls out of here as well. They will be fairly regular bowls. Once we figure out what we're going to make, and we need to figure out how we want to arrange the wood on there to give us the best kind of bowl that we can get. Up here, these top two are like a regular bowl that you're used to. And if we center the log perfectly, we'll get this kind of shape here in the bottom. These little X here in the bottom. If we move it off to the side a little bit, it gives us a little different shape. Most of you won't notice that, but I try to do my best to get that in there when I can. The natural edge bowl, again, if I'm centered properly, I'll get a nice rings around the center. If I don't, it'll be off to the side. And we'll show you that in the demo. I don't have a lot of pictures of my hollow forms, but I do sometimes make some hollow forms. And this is John Jordan. And I was lucky enough to take a class and a couple of classes with him. And he and David Ellsworth were two of the people that were very early on in starting the this wood turning movement that we have today. And he is showing you what you're going to get when you get from a log, how you get the pieces to look the way you want them to look. This is all part of what you need to think about as you're positioning the wood, as you're cutting the wood. The piece I'm going to demo tonight, I cut the wood and it's a little off center. So I'm still going to turn the piece. I'm just not going to have that perfect thing. But if you're trying to make a really, really nice piece, that's how, this is what we need to think about ahead of time. And this is Endgrain. So if we take the end of the log and the bark is all the way around the edge here, and these are the growth rings. And you see how it is cracked from stresses here in the center. And that happens a lot because the wood moves and the wood will crack. I filled these with a little bit of epoxy. Maybe sometimes I'll use some coffee grounds. I'll put some coffee grounds in the crack and then put a little glue in there, and it gives you a nice black line, which sometimes it's hard to tell where that is, depending on what the wood looks like. And this is where this bowl lives. A friend of mine gave me the wood from when they were building their house, so I gave her a bowl back, and it lives there at its new home inside the house.
That's incredible. That's nice.
I try to get a piece of a bowl back when people give me wood. Yeah, people ask me what kind of wood I like to turn, and I like most other wood turners say free wood. I hear a chainsaw in the neighborhood, I go running. We walk around the neighborhood every morning, and sometimes I get lucky and get some wood. But I'm always looking for some hardwood that is that people are just cutting down.
I have one question. It
Yeah.
was in the beginning. Somebody asked, like Donna asked, like she's interested to know how long wood has to age. The one tree, fell in the summer, in her backyard, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The log about 10 to 12 inches diameter and maybe 2 feet long. So
that's a good question, and it depends. If it's, first of all, if a tree comes down, I like to get there as soon as I can, because it's going to start to crack. And depending on how big the piece of wood is, the cracks may stay in the end, and that's what I'm trying to avoid, so I don't get it in the bowl. So if I can cut it and get it either turned or slowed down, and I'll talk about that here in a moment, how I try to slow the cracking down. So I like to get to it early. If it's big enough, like if a tree falls down and it's been there a year, and I want to make a small piece and it's a big piece of wood, I can cut it there and there's a good chance it won't be cracking. So a year's, I'm always a little shaky when it's a year that somebody's had something around, but if it's big enough still laying there, if people have cut it up into lengths. What I really like, if somebody's cutting me some wood, if I want to make a bowl that's as big as the piece of wood, I'd look at what the diameter is, and then I'd like it to be a little longer than that. Sometimes if it's really, really big, that doesn't count, but I try to get it a little bigger than anything I would want to try to make, so that I can turn away those cracks. In terms of drying wood, if I turn a bowl and I want it to be round, you saw that bowl in my last, no, the other way, back up. This one here, down here in the bottom right, is not, you see a little warp in here, and that's because it dried and it started to move. Wood will move, so if I want it to be round, I would turn it about 10% of what I want it to be. So if it's a 12-inch bowl, I'd leave it about an inch thick, so that I can return it and hopefully make it round. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I guess.
So the trees, I'm going to call them, they're made up of straws, but it has water going up to the top, and so that it can go and feed the tree. Takes food up and down, and as the tree grows, those straws in the outside are doing most of the work, and the inside ones start to get clogged up and filled up a little bit. And so most of the water is going up in the sapwood or the new growth along the edge. What happens is when you cut the log is that water starts to go out. And as the water leaves those straws, it starts to compress on the end, and where the water hasn't come out of, it still tries to stay its shape, and it starts to put tension on it and tries to move it. It tries to shrink in different ways. Different woods lose water and have different amounts of water in them. And so some won't move much, some will move a whole lot. So this is examples of some of the things that can go wrong here with it. So that the tension here was so bad that it made these cracks. I had this thicker so that I would hope that it would, I could turn it down if it moved a little bit, but this moved so much that it put this huge crack in it. I obviously didn't do a good job of trying to slow that down. What I would try to do is to put, I try to make it all the same size so that it would lose water at the same rate. And if the grain is going this way, because here's the sapwood, and here's the middle of the tree in here. I hope everybody can see my pointer.
Yeah.
So these here are just tiny little straws here, and out here they're going to be a little longer. So it's going to lose water faster here. So sometimes I'll put a wax on the ends. Sometimes I'll put a wax on the whole thing to slow it way down. And if I see it start to crack even with that, then I'll turn it away and see what I can get from that. But sometimes I'll just put it on the ends, depending on the wood. This one, I just did a bad job. I think I put some wax on this big piece because I thought the rest of it was consistent enough.
So can we fix it?
No, this one's history. This one's sitting out in my garage, and I go, oh, this is a good example of something I need to burn. Now this one over here, I turned already, and I left it out to dry out in my garage, and it's still cracked. Here you can see there's a what I believe is a branch that was coming through the tree, going about ready to go out. But then it caused some tension in here. And then right after that, it cracked a big crack. But then it had these other little cracks right here that I have no idea why they cracked. But this was turned to, you know, 1/4 inch or so or less. And it was pretty consistent. And I don't know why this one cracked. It moved a lot. So I guess when it moved, it cracked. But you never know what's going to happen on these. So, and I think wood turning is some of the safest ways to turn wood or to work with wood. Your sharp tools are in your hand and your hand's not moving towards a sharp blade, or you can hold the wood more safely than others, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So you can make it safe, and to stand out of the line of fire. Some things that happen sometimes we show you is I'm going to show you how to play screw. If you don't good screw into bad wood, it could come out. I'm going to show a 4-jaw chuck, and if you don't set that up right, it may fly off. So you need to be careful, but there are ways to make it do. If you have a catch in your wood, with your tool at the wrong angle, something like this might happen. You can see here where there was a catch. So their tool dug in and put some stress on the wood, and it just tore apart. And that went flying everywhere. Hopefully, well, I was out of the way when it happened, so it went flying sideways and I was in the back. Sometimes it's just a weak spot in the wood, like in the middle of wood, you get bark inclusions that where the tree might have grown around and there's a bark together in the middle, and that's a weak spot. And if it starts to get thin enough, it'll fall apart. These are things you need to slow down and pay attention to. Sometimes we make funnels because we go too thin at the bottom, and those are firewood. Sometimes if you don't check how fast your lathe is going, it goes too fast for what you've got on there. So you always need to start slow and continue. And sometimes there's objects in the wood. This was a neighbor's tree. I was excited to get some apricot wood, and there was these metal pieces in it to try to hold it together. And you can find all sorts of metal things in wood, especially the urban wood. So what are we going to make? These are some things I've made. Up here in the upper left is what woodturners call a box. It's a bowl of some sort with a lid on it. This is one of the few woods that I did purchase. This is manzanita root burl from the West Coast, and I was trying to save this bark edge on here, so it's pretty heavy and pretty thick, but it's kind of an interesting wood to work with. This is a hollow form. This is an urn that I made. This is red maple burl. And burl, when you see a growth on the side of a tree, sometimes it's just a branch they cut off and it starts to grow a little bit around it. Sometimes it's exciting, or sometimes it's not exciting. Sometimes it's really exciting. This happened to be a tree a friend or someone took down, and they got my name, thank God. And they said, I think there's a burl on the bottom. So I came running over. It was a 3-foot diameter tree, and there was burl all the way around the bottom. And I've turned many, 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 many things from it, and I'm very appreciative of them. This is where 2 branches come together, or the tree starts to split. We call it the crotch, and sometimes it's that bark inclusion in between, like branches came together and then they just kind of grew around that. But sometimes it starts to mingle together and makes this fine feather that I love, and I try to, whenever I get it, I try to maximize it. This piece just did wonderful for that. This is a box elder burl down here, and this is a coring technique where you can try to save some of the good wood and not make it all into shavings. And so I made a couple of bowls out of the same piece of wood. This is a piece of sycamore from my neighborhood. It's kind of bland, so I tried putting some milk paint on it. This would be a spindle turning. This is a rolling pin that I just used the other day. We make some pens. We meet at the Woodworkers Club, and they have a class. You can go make your own pen. Often on November, we'll have Turn for the Troops at the Woodworkers Club, at the Woodcraft store. And you can make your pen and send it off to the troops. So I like to go help with that. And you don't need any experience to just come in and turn a pen.
So all marks we see on the vessels, all are natural, right?
I'm sorry?
All marks and colors we see on the vessels, all are natural, right?
This I turned green.
You turn green.
I turned this one green. This is blue paint. All the rest are natural here. I don't know if you can see this one.
Yeah, we can see that.
My people are here, but there's a little face in here that I like.
The birdie or something.
Yeah, that's all natural. That was in the wood. There's actually 4 sides of this vase that have interesting things. And this is a piece of the same wood from here, from this tree. It has some, now this black lines in here are spalting. And that's when the tree starts to decay, starts to get old. It will sometimes get this nice black lines through it. Sometimes they're orange lines, sometimes they're different colored lines, but it's often black. And this is, I had the natural edge on here as well. Here I've done some, I try to maximize some things with color. This is an oak bowl that I had sitting around, and it warped a little bit and I didn't know what to do with it. So I started carving on it. I carved these fins on it and I turned it red with the dye. So you could, all these lines in here are natural, but it's just dyed red. And then I textured in here and turned that one black. And then I put, it's oak and it has a lot of tannins in it. That's why you like your Chardonnays oaky, is to get some of those tannins in there. And I put some vinegar and steel wool, and I let it sit for a little bit, and then I rubbed it on the inside and it turned it black. And that's the same as I did here. This, I did the same thing. This, I put a little bit of liming wax to enhance the growth rings. And that's also oak. This is a maple. It's 3 different pieces of maple. This again is the crotch that I was talking about, how it gets that nice feather. So one branch was going here, one branch is going here, and this is where the growth in the middle was. So I'm trying to enhance that, and I thought this kind of looks like a river, so I'm going to try to make it a little blue, like a little stream. And then I piece of maple burl I'm using as the rock, and this figured maple is a little splash that I have going on in it. So this is one of my first bowls I ever turned, and it sat in my shop forever and ever because it had this big hole in it. And I wanted to figure out what to do with it. One day I decided I needed to play how I can carve and paint. So I carved these bricks along it, and it goes 3/4 of the way around, and started painting it. And then I decided, oh, I need a vine on here. So I took some of my turning shavings and glued them on and painted those green. And
That's
that's
beautiful.
the red on the inside. I painted a little red to make it look like fire. So if you're looking through the hole, you can see some fire. And these two are natural. It's oak, and this is the sapwood, and this is the heartwood, and they just happen to get that dark. I don't know. I didn't do anything to them, but this is how I use color to try to make yin and yang here. So, is there any questions with any of that?
It's all are so beautiful. Uh, we have one question, team.
Yeah,
The first is like, what kind of paint do you use?
well, this is dye. This is trans tint dye, and this is acrylic paint. I try to do a dry brush method that I was taught, but that's about all. I use a little bit of India ink as well.
Is there another question? Like, there is another question, like, is there any woodcraft store where sewing class are going on?
There's a woodcraft store at Randolph and Park Lawn. They do classes. They have pen turning, they have bowl turning, and they have spindle turning.
Mhm.
And they're great people that are there. So I highly
Do they
recommend.
also have sawing classes where you learn how to use like a table saw and things like that?
They do have other classes, yes. They used to be a membership shop where you could have a membership and they teach you how to use all the tools and then you can make whatever you wanted. They've gone to more of an educational class and they have all sorts of different classes. The big thing now is like epoxy cutting boards or wood and epoxy, and you get a nice thing. They do a bunch of that as well. This is my latest little adventure. This is my take on the Three Little Pigs, only it's the Three Little Birds. We have the straw house, the wood house, and the brick house. I got, in our neighborhood, we have a sawtooth oak acorns that come down, and they have this very strange cap. And I tried to mimic that, and I don't know if I did a good job at the cap, but it made me think of a straw house. So then I went on with the wood, and this is all these three are cherry wood, and it's all carved, sometimes pyrography carved, and painted with acrylic paint, except for this is a branch, and my metal perches for the brick house are found metal that we find on the street. So I put a little door down there, and there's a little heart on the back carved in. So let's see if we can make a bowl. Let's see if I can get this started. All right, so this is the wood we're going to use. Let me see if I can make this bigger. All right, so this is a piece of apple that a friend, wait, stop. Go back. This is a piece of apple that a friend of mine was taking down a bunch of apple trees and asked me if I wanted some. So I said yes, and I had this out in my garage. So this is what we're going to use, and here's the tools that I'm going to use today. This is a spindle gouge. It's not as deep as these two bowl gouges. And then this is a scraper. So I'm going to use the sharp edge of these gouges to cut and make cuts on the wood. This is a scraper where I put a little burr along this edge, and then it's going to do the cutting with the little burr as I scrape it. So this is the piece of wood that I cut out. So I'm looking it over to see what I want to make. And here is where the center of the wood is. So I'm not going to be quite centered on this one, but I'm going to turn this one anyway. And you can see this is the sapwood. This is the newest growth. And then this is the heartwood that's colored a darker color. I'm going to use the faceplate. I've put the faceplate on. This is my extra holding back here just to make sure that it doesn't come off. I'm going to use my bowl gouge, and I'm going to do a push cut. And I'm going to, if I'm sitting here all alone, right behind me is a shavings bucket, and I try to hit the shavings bucket when I'm doing this roughing out, but it never seems to work. And this is a pull cut. And you see I have a green shirt on. Since I've never done this before, this was my first try at filming myself and editing it. So I wanted to make sure that it was going to work. So the shirt will change soon. And this I switched to left-handed. Just to, once you do this enough, you needed to use both hands. One's almost always better than the other. And you'll notice I move pretty quickly here sometimes. I've sped it up so we can get this in time. Hopefully we'll have time to finish this whole bowl. So here I've changed shirts. Now I put a faceplate on it where I screwed it in, and that's the safest way I know to hold it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to shape the bowl kind of and make a tenon. So I'm going to make a piece on the end here that'll fit my chuck so that I can hollow it out. Back in the old days, they didn't have 4-jaw chucks. See, I'm going to measure to fit my chuck. And they used a lot of just the faceplate to hollow things out. And if you ever look at a really old bowl, you might see screw holes in the bottom that they've put little dowels in. And that tells you that it was on a faceplate. The trick these days is, conventional wisdom is, you try to hide how you did it. If a wood turner can come up and tell you how you held it, then it's not as good, I guess. I don't know, but that's the trick. So I'm going to try to make that as best as I can. I'm going to try to make this bowl shape the one I like. My goal when I try to make a bowl is to try to make a nice fair curve along the bowl. I try not to get any flat spots, but it's hard. And my goal is to make a pleasing bowl to the eye that is still usable if it's a usable bowl. If it's not a usable bowl, then I'm okay with making it fancy and really small foot or something different. Maybe no foot at all. Maybe it rocks. But so I'm gonna turn this bowl, and then I'm gonna turn this piece of wood around and put it in my chuck. I think.
You're shaping it, right?
Yes, I'm trying to get that bowl shape that I want. It doesn't have to be totally right, because I'm going to have to do it again, because every time you turn this thing around, it's going to move a little bit. It never seems to be in the same place.
So do you get an idea, like sketch or measurement or something, how far you'll scrap and how big you want?
I usually don't. I usually just, from the wood that I have, figure out it. See, now there's how the 4-jaw chuck works. I'm going to pull it around and all 4 jaws will close in on it at the same time. I usually try to get from the bowl what the wood tells me. And usually if I want the best bowl, I will probably go between centers to start instead of on the faceplate, and make sure that I've got those lines correct. And then just make the best bowl I can. When you first start turning, you get a piece of wood and you think it's the best thing you got, and you're going to use all of that, as much of that as I can. And right now I go for the best shape that I can get. And so especially with bowls, if I'm doing something different, I will try something, I will try to sketch it out maybe. I've got a big platter that I want to put on a wall, and I'm not sure what I want to do with it yet. So that one I'm going to sketch out. I might sketch it out on the platter. I might sketch it out on the on a piece of paper. So here's where I'm hollowing. I'm using that 4-jaw chuck to hold that tenon, and I'm out of the way. If that tenon would happen to fall off, and I've had that happen, the bowl will go sideways and I'll be out of the way. So my goal here is to get it out. Now, if I wanted to make a round bowl and make it perfect, well, as perfectly round as I could, I would leave it thick, and when I switch I'll stop for a minute, and that's probably where I would stop and try to let it move. Maybe it's 1/10 of the size of the whole width. So I would probably stop around here, and I would make sure it was all the same thickness, and then put it in a paper bag and put it in my garage for, they say a year, to get it to dry. Every inch is a year of sitting. So if I wanted to dry completely, it would probably have been 8 months, 10 months at least. But we're going to finish this one off so we can show you the process. These are my fancy calipers here, my fingers. They sometimes tell you better than the metal calipers of where you need to turn. So tell me where I start to get thick, and then I just keep going some more. See, this is the prime seat where if we weren't behind this computer, you'd be getting shavings in your face when I'm turning like that. Now you can see at the bottom, there's some of the sapwood is coming through. So instead of having that perfect line in the bottom, I'm going to go with something interesting to get your attention to drawing down there and have the sapwood do that. So that's my goal. So it seems a little.
This is so satisfying watching.
It is satisfying doing it too.
Yeah.
It's very calming. You just get down there and you get in your own head and you're just relaxing. Now here I'm scraping to get rid of some of those lines to make my curve a little better. If you hear that little squeak that I had in there, that's going to cost me some sanding time right there. Yeah, that one too. So that one's doing some chattering, and it's making a little mark on there that I'm going to have to sand out. But this apple wood is so very nice. It turns really nice. The problem, I love to turn fruit woods, but they move a lot. And I think I think there was a flowering cherry, the one that cracked so much, and they crack a lot. So down at the bottom here, I had dust collection to take most of the dust out. And what you didn't see with that last cut is that I did a lot of sanding. I don't usually sand when it's wet too much, but I wanted to get this one kind of finished. So now I'm going to put in a jam chuck, and I'm going to put this on to protect the piece a little bit. And I should have put the foam a little bit farther to the right, but I put it back in the same hole so I know that I'm centered. And I'm going to push it on that jam chuck so it doesn't come off.
So
Actually,
what are you doing? Like,
I'm going to take the bottom off now.
okay.
Remember I said I'm going to finish the bottom. I'm going to finish that, the foot, and then I'm going to take off the tenon and make it a good bottom. And here's a better way. So you can see that we have this tenon still on here. Where am I? There. And the foot's a little big, so I'm going to make the foot a little smaller. And that line I just cut there is about where the foot's going to go. And now I'm going to take all that wood away. See, if I was worried about how much wood that I used, I would have made a bigger bowl deeper, but I think this is a better shape. So I went with this shape. And now I want to take this little piece off of the bottom here. And I want to keep it held as much as I can, because I don't really trust this jam chuck, although the jam chuck was doing a very, very good job this time. It was the right size. And you'll see me have to persuade it to get off. So there's the shape of the bowl and my foot. So I'm going to take that little piece off. There's my double speeded turning. And now I'm going to sand the foot and anything else that I need to sand on the outside. And what I will do now is I'll let this dry. I put this in a paper bag and let it dry for a week and a half or so. So there's your bowl. And that should have stayed there longer. Get me out of here. And where was and this is the bowl that we made. So you can see here, it's not flat across the top because it moved. And if you can tell, I don't know if you can tell here, but I just measured it, and it's a ½ inch more this way than it is this way. It was round when I got done turning it, but then as the wood dried, it moved a ½ inch more along the line. And here's the line of where the center was. So it's a little off center. And you can kind of see that it's so here's some of the characteristics that was in the wood. This is the end. So here's the one part that came up high. This is where the center of the wood was. And then it goes down here, along here, and then up to the other part. So that's me. That's wood turning. Hit me with some questions.
That was so good demo. Did
Well,
you make that video especially for this?
I did.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Amazing.
That's my share screen.
Maybe you can stop this.
That's what I'm trying to remember how to do this.
Yeah, okay. This was so amazing demo. I love it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, wood is so beautiful. That's why I do it. Most of the thing I showed you a lot of coloring, but most of the stuff I do is trying to bring out the best of the wood. So
whenever I saw your pieces, beautiful pieces, I touched it, I was wondering, how did you turn it? Now it's like, oh, good to see. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, thank you all. And any other questions? I'd be glad to try to answer them. And I hopefully you got my information, tturning@gmail.com. If you have a tree coming down, send me a message. I have some pieces that will be at the artisan market. That's going to be in Kentlands. It's right next to where the old Starbucks was, or right next to Java Nation. We're going to be opening in April.
He's our best seller of the group.
Well, maybe now that Pam's gone.
Yeah.
You're welcome all.
No, it was really great demonstration, the beautiful demo, and everything was so informative, step by step, very simple, very nice. So love it, love it. Thank you so much, team. It was so fantastic to have you.
You're welcome.
Here.
You're welcome. It was fun. I was glad to you pushed me into doing this, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So
no, it was so fantastic. Nobody can tell this is the first time you're pro. Believe me. I will take you somewhere else now. It is really fantastic. Very cut to cut and so beautifully presented. And the YouTube video you have done, the demo, it's very fascinating, and watching how you do it, a detailed video, like a professional video. Very nice.
Well, it needs some cleaning up if it's going to be promotional, but it turned out better than I had expected. So
no, it was very good. It's very good. And the video was so interesting because you were on site, you were explaining what is happening. So it was so interesting watching.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of demos of people, both in person and since COVID on Zoom. And so I've seen a lot of what I don't like, and I hope I got rid of some of that and did something pretty good. I could turn a little better bowl, but it was good. Thank you.
We have Frank also. Frank, are you here? Yeah.
I am here. I don't know if you can see me or not.
Yeah, he is.
But yes, thank you on behalf of Montgomery Art Association. Thank you, Tim, for joining us. And it was a really great presentation. It was fascinating.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It was fun. Like I said, I hadn't done this before, but I've seen a lot of them, and hopefully I got everything in.
Yeah, everything. Thank you so much. I'm glad.
Tim, are you able to see our chat to read comments that people are leaving for you?
Yes, I was looking.
Oh,
at
wonderful.
That was thank you all for the good, nice words. That was. I'm glad it worked out. And hopefully, when you go into the store and you see that bowl, you'll have a little different appreciation for it, and you'll say, "Oh, that one's not as good as it could have been," or "This one's great." So that's good.
I do have one question. If
Sure.
kind of following up on the last part of your talk, when you and forgive me if, and I did come in a little late, so forgive me if you had described this earlier on, but when you've dried a piece and the final piece as it dries sort of distends a little bit and kind of goes out of your intended shape, like you have that sort of, you have that the edge becomes non-straight, or it gets a little oblong, or it doesn't keep the shape that you originally had envisioned. How easy is it to cure that or correct it, or is it pretty much a lost cause at that point? Is there are there ways to deal with that?
It depends. I try to leave 10% thickness to let it do that thing and then go back and return it. If that works, fine. Sometimes it gets pretty close to the edge, but that usually works. I showed a piece that had cracked a whole bunch. I don't know if you were there for that. Those are usually not recoverable, at least that much. What I will do, if I really like the wood, I will cover it with some wax and let it dry. And if it starts to crack, it starts to move too much, then I'll go ahead and turn it, and hopefully it'll just turn that way. And then it won't crack anymore, hopefully, and it'll just let it be out of, you know, like our bowl today, a little bigger on one side and a little thinner on the other side.
Right.
But that's my goal. If you saw the red piece that I had carved the wings on, I
Yes.
kind of turned that and mostly to finish, and it moved out of round, and it wasn't very attractive at that point, and I couldn't really make it better. So that's why I carved that one, and to make something better out of it.
Nice.
And it worked out pretty well. But it's just a matter of how much you can work with, is left to work with, and if you can't, then you either try something else or you burn it. It grows on trees.
Thank you for that explanation. That's and again, it's all very beautiful work. So it was great to see you developing it.
Too bad there's all the ones that crack and things, and that's what makes it, you know, you pick out the ones that survive, and hopefully they're the good ones. So sound good. Anybody else?
No, I think.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you again. Thank you again so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for
Thank you all
coming.
for showing up.
Yeah, for coming and sharing the secret behind your technique generously.
And
That's amazing.
if you're interested in doing this, or if you know somebody who's interested in doing this, or if you have a tree coming down that you wonder if somebody wants, send me an email, and I can send you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Now I will keep you in my mind.
That's why I'm here.
And I'll ask for a ball. Okay, I want this. Maybe I would love to try someday.
Yeah. Like I said, Woodcraft down at Park Lawn and Randolph has classes, and they have some good teachers. And once you try it and get hooked, then you join our club and make your own stuff. So, but the pens are really interesting, and they're fun to make. Lori Hartman had made a pen before and then lost it or something, and went back and just recently took a pen class as well.
Wow.
So
That's nice. Good.
All right then.
Okay. Thank you so much, team. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
everyone.
all.
Thank you, Hiral.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.